Good morning. It's good to be with all of you again. Thanks for that kind introduction, William. I don't think anybody's ever called me kind before I got up and preached. It's good to have the masks here. They couldn't stand to know that I was not going to be at Embry Hills this morning and came all the way here just to listen to me. That was a joke. All right, over the last few years, one of the things that I've been doing more and more in the community is studying with atheists and agnostics. And when I lived in San Diego, I was supposed to meet a lot of secular people there, but I'm meeting far more secular people here than I ever did in California. And so what I want to do in this lesson this morning is share kind of in an overview sort of way some of the things that I've been studying with skeptics. And I have a couple reasons for wanting to do this. Maybe in your workplace, you find yourself around people that don't believe in God, or they've got some questions about the reliability of the Bible or whatever. This lesson maybe just gives us another tool to know how to have some conversations. Maybe you're here this morning, though, and you kind of feel your faith slipping away a little bit. And maybe this lesson will help us reconfirm the things that we have believed at one point, but maybe are slipping from to some extent. As we get started, though, I just want to give a little bit of a cultural pulse on what's going on in the United States right now. I'm going to show some statistics, and these statistics apply to the United States. Religion is on the decline in the United States, but it's not on the decline in other parts of the world. And so there's some maybe things that we could explore with that we don't have time to today. But October 17th, 2019, Pew Research Center, they posted an article, and the title of the article was, "In the United States, Decline of Christianity Continues at Rapid Pace." And what they describe non-religious or secular people as being atheistic, they don't believe in God, agnostic, they're not sure if God exists, or just indifferent to religion. So there's kind of like a spectrum of non-religious people. But they found in this research that in 2019 that the religiously unaffiliated is 26% in the United States. But in 2009, it was 17% of people. Now, that number might seem, oh, well, that seems kind of high. 1 in 4 people, I guess, has no interest in religion. Just a few months ago, Gallup Research did another kind of study, and in this research, they found that less than 50% of Americans belong to a church now. Now, there's a lot of people that are not connected to any kind of local church. Would every one of them be agnostic, atheist, or indifferent to religion? Probably not. But they still said in this article that the decline in church membership is primarily a function of the increasing number of Americans who express no religious preference. So they say in the article the reason that this has jumped up so much, just over the course of 2 years, by the way, is because of this kind of cultural push. Now, what are the reasons that religion is on the decline in the United States? Some people might point to certain things that are taught at certain colleges. Some people might point to certain things that you find on TV, more of the cultural push away from religion. A lot of people have thought, though, and this was a theory for a long time, and I think people still hold to this, that after the Enlightenment taught that the human mind ought to be able to explain everything, so that for the scientist, the atheistic scientist, there is no such thing as a mystery. What there is a momentary puzzle that we'll eventually figure it out. And so the human mind ought to be able to understand everything. And so the longer and longer we've had time to research things, the less and less we'll need religion to answer the questions that science can now answer, or the atheistic worldview can answer. And so right now I'm studying with a group of atheists on Mondays. And in the first meeting that we had, the first thing that I wanted them to understand is that you might be sitting across the table from me thinking that you are the one that's totally rational, totally objective, and you're the one that doesn't have any kind of faith. And so in the first discussion, I wanted to help them understand that you still have to have faith, that the world was created the way that you thought it was created, or started the way that you thought it was started. Or that evolution has worked in the ways that you think evolution has worked. That these are things that require some degree of faith. And so if you get rid of Christianity or religion in your life, to get rid of religion doesn't mean that you're getting rid of faith. Instead, when you adopt a secular worldview, it's a different set of beliefs that require faith. How many times have you interacted with somebody who's secular or skeptic or atheistic, and they thought that you're the person of faith and you've got like emotional reasons for believing, but we are the rational ones? One of the things that I do when I study with the atheists is I don't quote so much from the Bible. I quote the atheists that they would respect as a way to try to gain credence with what they believe. But so one of the quotes that I bring up to them is by Aldous Huxley, who was an English philosopher. He was an atheist. And in 1937, he wrote a book called Ends and Means, and he said this: "The philosopher who finds no meaning in the world is not concerned exclusively with the problem in metaphysics." And by the way, when he says no meaning in the world, he's saying that there's no transcendent God, there's no ultimate meaning to my existence. So the person who believes that is not concerned exclusively with the problem in metaphysics. He's also concerned to prove that there is no valid reason why he personally should not do as he wants to do. For myself, the philosophy of meaningless was essentially an instrument of liberation, sexual and political. So here's Aldous Huxley, and he's saying, all right, well, the reason that I was attracted to this worldview of nihilism, or this worldview of meaninglessness, was that it gave me moral licenses to do the things that I felt like doing. Now, does it sound like he's got emotional reasons for wanting to discredit God? Every time I've studied with a couple waves of atheists now, and I'll always ask them, what made them leave God? What made them leave any kind of conception of God, whether it was misguided or not? What made them walk away from that? And every single time I've asked that question, they've said something like, well, I grew up with hypocritical parents who said that they believed in God, but they were really mean to me, and they didn't really live it out. Or other people would say things like, well, I went to a church before, and the people in the church were hypocrites, and they were mean, and some people looked at me wrong one day, or so whatever it could be. And so what began their unbelief, what started it, was an emotional experience. And then they go and read all these atheists and stuff like this to make it sound like it's just totally objective. No, that's not how it started. And in fact, a lot of these people that you read from, like Aldous Huxley, would have emotional reasons why you shouldn't believe. All right, so here's my question. This is what's going on in the United States right now. More and more people are leaving religion. A lot of it is actually for emotional reasons. It's not just because people were just really enlightened by taking a logic class in college or something like that. How do you deal with teaching people? How do you explain God to people in a society like this? One of the things that I used to do is immediately go to what I call more like objective arguments for God. Like, what are the logical reasons to believe in God? What's the archaeological evidence for the Bible? How do we know that the Bible's reliable? You just kind of deal with these objective kinds of things. Every year, the Oxford English Dictionary has a word of the year. And the word of the year is supposed to kind of define a major thing about that year. In 2016, the Oxford English Dictionary word of the year was post-truth. Post-truth, meaning that people make decisions about what they believe and what their meaning in life is and everything like that, not based on facts, but based on emotion. Based on what they feel inside is the thing that they need to do. And so if we live in a world that's more concerned about how I feel about things and less concerned about facts and logical arguments, but here I am trying to tell an atheist, here's the logical reasons to believe in God. Do you think, doesn't that kind of sound like two ships passing in the night? It's like objectivism trying to meet subjectivism. So what I do whenever I'm studying with these skeptics is try to help them understand that every human being has needs in life. We all have things that we need. And we're about to talk about 4 of them. And so I ask the question, these needs that you know you have, does the secular worldview provide that need to you better than the Christian worldview? In other words, if you get rid of Christianity, if you get rid of God in the Bible, what resources are you left with the things that you know you need? And so this is what I call subjective evidence. As you look within you and ask yourself hard questions like, is my secular worldview really providing for me? The first thing that we're going to talk about is meaning in life. By the way, sometimes I do more than 4. Like each, we'll have a full discussion just on meaning. That'll be like tomorrow what we're doing is identity, which is going to be the next thing I'm going to cover. So I'm going to zoom through these really quickly, but you'll get kind of a flavor. And as we go through this, perhaps you'll get some ideas on how you could prompt discussion with some people in a non-threatening kind of way. So the first thing is all of us would agree, whether you're atheistic or religious, that we all need a sense of meaning in life. Well, what is meaning? Meaning is that we're here for a purpose. In other words, we look back to our origins, where we came from, looking back to our Creator or back to some kind of heritage that we have. We're here for a reason. And the other part of meaning is that what we do counts forever. That has some kind of lasting impact. All right, so the first question is then, well, what's the secular approach to meaning? And here's where, when I'm studying with the skeptics, I want to show them what atheists have said, because I can't just tell them what they think. I'm letting the atheists speak for them. So Stephen Jay Gould was an atheist. He died in 2002, I believe it was. And he said this: "We are here because one odd group of fishes had a peculiar fin anatomy that could transform into legs for terrestrial creatures, because the earth never froze entirely during an ice age. We may yearn for a higher answer, but none exists. This explanation, though superficially troubling, if not terrifying, is ultimately liberating and exhilarating. We must construct these answers for ourselves." So you see here that he's saying in the secular worldview, hey, why are you here, Mr. Atheist? And then he says, well, we're here because we got lucky that the earth never froze entirely during some ice age. And that one day there was a fish that got lucky enough to get to this coral reef or this rock formation or something. It was able to fin its way up or something. I don't know how that works, but it got lucky. And so that's why we're here, is because we got lucky. Now that might sound really scary, that we're really not here for any reason. But do you see what he says here? This is really actually the thing that brings us liberation, because we get to decide for ourselves where we put our meaning. Doesn't that sound a lot like how people talk today? When I was studying with the atheists a couple weeks ago when we covered this topic, they said, yes, that's right. We agree with this quote. We get to find meaning for ourselves, but there's no such thing as objective, transcendent meaning, because there's no God that's given us meaning. So we get to decide it for ourselves. So then you ask the question, okay, well, what is your meaning in life then? And some people might say, well, my meaning in life is my career. My meaning in life is my family. My meaning in life is my animal, my pet. Why are people so obsessed with dogs these days? If you have one, that's fine. But it's just like a thing in our culture. Here's one thing to bring up about this, that if your meaning in life is in your career or in your family, let's just say that your meaning in life is your family. Do you know what one car accident can do to your meaning in life? It can take it away. What if your meaning in life is your career? And you write some book or you have some blog or something, and then suddenly everybody has some reason to hate it, and now the thing that you're putting your meaning in has been totally obliterated. The problem with figuring out what your own meaning in life is that anything that we would put our meaning into in this life is extremely fragile and can be taken away from you. So what is it then that Christianity has to offer in contrast? Number one, why are we here? We're made in God's image. What does it mean to be made in God's image? An image, like your license, you've got a picture. Everywhere I've lived, I always take the worst license pictures. But the first time I ever took one, I was told to not smile, and I've taken that really seriously ever since then. So every one of them, I look like I'm some kind of convict or something. But it's an image of me. But it's not literally me. It's a reflection of me, I guess, when I'm grumpy. But it doesn't express me when I'm happy or when I have other emotions or something like that. God said in the Bible to make no images of himself, right? Except that in Genesis chapter 1, God did make an image of himself. It's not like a bull or a crow, or it's not some kind of powerful animal or like a gentle lamb. If you were to make one image of God and it was a bull, it would just describe his power, but it wouldn't describe his mercy or his compassion. That's the problem of trying to reduce God. But God did make an image of himself, and what is it? Human beings. The only thing God made that can adequately reflect him is a human being. You think that sounds a little bit better than we got lucky because a fish finned his way up out of the water? So we're here because we're made in God's image, to reflect his character, to be like him. And what we do counts forever because we can make an eternal impact in the life of other people when we encourage each other, when we teach other people about the Lord and teach them about the gospel. The things that we do don't just last 30, 40, 60, or even 1,000 years. They last into eternity. But if one of the main problems with the secular worldview of meaning is that it's going to be taken away from you, can our meaning in life as a Christian ever be taken away from us, no matter what kind of suffering we go through? No. 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 20 and 21, what credit is it if when you sin and are beaten for it you endure? But if when you do good and suffer for it you endure, this is a gracious thing in the sight of God. For to this you've been called, because Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example, that you might follow in his steps. Here's what Peter's saying, that when you suffer, it drives you deeper into your meaning in life. But if you're a secular person and you go through suffering, it can take you away from your meaning in life. So we've been inoculated in every way if we have the Christian worldview. The Christian worldview offers something far more robust to have meaning in life. Well, so that's the first one. The second one is identity. This is another need that all of us have. We want to be able to call ourselves something. We want to be able to know who we are. All of us in this room have different hats that we wear. So, for example, I'm a husband, I'm a father, but I'm a son, I'm a preacher, I have a degree. There's different hats that we wear. And depending on what hats we wear, we act a little different. So when I talk to Samantha, I don't preach to her like what I'm doing to you guys right now. It's a little different. And so, not that that's not a contradictory thing, but it's just we just act different with the different hats we wear. So what is your identity? Your identity is who you are, what's identical about you in every hat that you wear. There might be little differences when you're at work or when you're with your family or whatever, but what's at the core, what's true about you? That's your identity. So what is there's a traditional approach to understanding who you are, and there's a more modern approach. The traditional approach works from the outside in. Now what this means is that in more traditional cultures, that if society, if your dad was a fisherman or a farmer, what would be expected of you in the traditional society? That you'd be a fisherman or a farmer, that you'd take up the mantle that your dad had, and everybody in society would expect for you to do that. But what if you really wanted to do something else, like be a camel mechanic or something like that? You couldn't go ahead and do whatever you wanted to do. You had to look at what it was expected of you from the outside and work it into your heart, regardless of how you felt. The modern approach works the exact opposite, where it's the inside out, where you get to decide for yourself who you are, and then everybody better accept it. So rather than you stuffing everything, you make everybody else stuff it and say that you better like me for who I am. Now, one very sophisticated cultural example of this is the movie Frozen. 2013. Can you believe that movie's been out for 8 years now? In the song when Elsa does her Elsa thing, she says this in the song. I'm not going to sing it, but the song switches from the traditional approach to the modern approach. So in one part of the song, you'll remember this well, she says, "Don't let them in, don't let them see, be the good girl you always have to be. Conceal, don't feel, don't let them know." Does that sound like the traditional approach? This is what's true about me, but nobody better know. Like, I just have to be quiet about it. And she's really frustrated. And then the song suddenly turns really nicely. And it works from the inside out approach, where then she says, well, now they know. Let it go, can't hold it back anymore, let it go. Turn away and slam the door, I don't care what they're going to say. What is that? Now I'm going to be true to who I am, and all of you better accept exactly who I am. Now, there's a lot of problems. So I contrast this with the traditional approach just to know kind of where we are at culturally, but this approach exists as well. So this is where we're at in our culture right now. What are the problems with this approach to understanding who you are? Well, one problem with this is that it's very unreliable. It's self-contradictory. Have you ever had two desires that conflicted with each other? How many people in society want to have a really good career, but they also want to have a family and kids? Can you always have both of them? Or does something have to give a little bit? So our desires get self-contradictory, and so one of the things that this might get applied to is the transgender debates. Why does gender fluidity exist? You know what gender fluidity is? Is when somebody can say one day, I'm this gender, then 2 months later they can say, well, I'm actually this gender right now, and kind of live different periods of life where they're this gender than that gender. Why do psychologists come up with gender fluidity? Because they know that our desires are constantly changing. And so then they create a category to make that try to function in a helpful way, but it really doesn't work. Because in our core, we have conflicting desires. So how do I really know who I am? It's hard for me to figure that out. But there's a second problem with this. When I do this with the atheists, we actually discuss more problems with this, but I'm just giving you two. The second problem with this is that this is really ultimately an illusion. If society says, all right, you be true to yourself and everybody better be okay with it. All right, how about this? Can I, as a Christian, be true to myself and hold the values that the Scripture teaches, and everybody's just going to accept that and be okay with that? Can we do that? There's a lot of examples that you could give of that, but that's probably the best example. There are things at the end of the day that even in our society that says be true to yourself. Can I be true to myself and be a Christian? No, that one's off the table. So our culture really is actually kind of a traditional approach still, right? You be true to yourself, be true to yourself. Can I be a Christian? No, not that one. So I have to stuff that one? Yeah, you do. So that one doesn't work. All right, so then what is it that Christianity offers? So it's not either of these approaches, but the most succinct passage in the Bible that I think helps Christians have a sense of identity is 1 Corinthians 4, verses 3 and 4. I'm going to put it up here, but in the context, in the first 4 chapters of 1 Corinthians, Paul is helping the Corinthians understand why they should not be fighting and bickering over their favorite preachers. And so he's explaining who he is. He's explaining who he is in relation to how they should view him. And he says this in 1 Corinthians 4, verses 3 and 4. But with me it is a very small thing that I should be judged by you or by any human court. In fact, I do not even judge myself. For I'm not aware of anything against myself, but I am not thereby acquitted. It is the Lord who judges me. All right, notice how he rejects the traditional form of identity. He says here, it's a small thing that I should be judged by you. In other words, I don't care what you guys think about me. He says it's a small thing. Like maybe does he get a little bothered by it? I don't know. But he says it's a small thing nonetheless. But you might expect him to go, okay, well, I don't care what you think about me. I only care what I think about me. But he doesn't do that either, because he says here, I don't even judge myself. Now, he goes on to say, I'm not aware of anything against myself. In other words, my conscience isn't bothering me. I'm not aware of anything that I've done that I shouldn't have done lately. But that doesn't even mean that I'm acquitted. So what he's concerned with is what the Lord thinks about him. Not what people think, not what he thinks, it's what the Lord thinks. Now, I was studying with somebody this last week, and we went through some of this stuff with identity, and I asked the person, so you realize that trying to be accepted by people is like a drug addiction. It doesn't really work. Trying to affirm yourself doesn't work. You know why affirming yourself doesn't work? Let's say that somebody could get in your head and record all the times you've been frustrated by somebody else. Like every time you were frustrated that somebody lied to you, and every time you were frustrated that somebody was dishonored you, and every time somebody cut you off when you were driving. So you got this list of what apparently is your standards of right and wrong. And then somebody held that standard right to you. How are you doing? Not so well. So we can't affirm ourselves either. So what Paul says here is that it's the Lord who judges me. Now, what does the Lord think about us? One of my favorite things in the first 3 chapters of Ephesians is to look at all the titles God has given Christians. Like you're a saint, you're chosen, you're adopted, you're forgiven, you're loved, you're all these great things that he's called you. I have all of them highlighted in my Bible in Ephesians 1 through 3. All these beautiful things he's called us, that if we really believe those things, we're not going to care what other people think about us. We're not even going to care what I think about me, because I've got the praise of the most praiseworthy. And that fills my heart. So that's how a Christian, in a quick way, gets their sense of identity. The third one is our need for morality. Now, all of us believe that there are things that are objectively right and wrong. We all believe that racism is objectively wrong. We wouldn't ever say, like, well, it's wrong for me, but it's okay for you. Same thing with murder. We would never say, well, it's wrong for me, but it's okay for you. Everybody in the world seems to believe in objective moral standards. So, what is the secular approach to this need to have a reason for morality? And by the way, one thing I think I'll point out here that I think is important is that can atheistic people do morally good things? This used to be an argument that I used to hear Christians make, that atheists can't do morally good things because their reason for doing those things is not to honor God, it's for some other reason, whatever. Okay, you want to get into the motives? I don't know about all that. But I do know that an atheist can do very good moral things. And I've seen atheists do very good moral things. So my argument is not, well, if you're an atheist, you're going to be immoral. My argument is this: if you're an atheist or you're a secular person, you don't have good reasons to be moral. You don't have good reasons to ground it. So there's a couple approaches that secular people have to why we should care about morality. The first one is that morality comes from naturalistic evolution. They'll say that, well, it used to be the case that morality didn't really exist, but we've kind of evolved to the point where we've needed to care about morality. Remember when I said earlier that the secular approach to life requires faith? Here's one of the best examples of this. If we came about from the strong eating the weak, which is what Darwinian evolution teaches, why do you care about those who are weak? And why do you care about equal human rights when your worldview says you came about from the strong eating the weak? Now suddenly you care about it. It's very inconsistent with your worldview. So if you want to believe in equal human rights, that's great, but just recognize that it takes faith for you to believe it. Now, a second problem with this, that morality would come from evolution. Thomas Nagel is an atheist who wrote a book called Mind and Cosmos. And in the book, Thomas Nagel was arguing on why evolution that can't really make sense of so many things that we know about neuroscience, about the way our minds think and stuff like this. So he's an atheist who is saying we have to stop using evolution as a way to explain everything away that we don't know the answer to right now. So in this book, he said this: if evolutionary biology is a physical theory, as it is generally taken to be, then it cannot account for the appearance of consciousness and of other phenomena that are not physically reducible. What he's saying here is that Darwinian evolution, as it's taught, I'm not talking about if God happened to use evolution, that's a whole other debate. But I'm saying if you don't believe in God and you think evolution has kind of gotten us where we are right now, in all the science classes that you take in college, evolution is a physical thing. It's synapses firing, it's chemicals, physical chemicals doing things in your brain, all this kind of stuff. So if evolution is a physical theory, how does it ever create non-physical things like consciousness and non-physical things like morality? It doesn't really come from that worldview. So it, again, requires some... Okay, so that's the first approach that the secular person has, is morality comes from naturalistic evolution. Those are a couple of problems with it. Here's another approach that the secular person has, though, is that morality comes from social consensus. I don't know why people still use this argument. Nazi Germany is always the classic example. If people say, well, societies kind of determine what's right and wrong. Well, some societies have been Nazi Germany. So was that okay for them? Boom, that one is done. Okay, so what is it that Christianity offers then? How is Christianity a better worldview at helping us understand our reason to be moral? And by the way, one of the biggest complaints people have about Christianity is the hypocrisy of Christians. Can Christians be hypocritical? Yeah. Do you suppose that Christians sometimes struggle to live out their worldview, to be moral? Yeah. Everybody, no matter what their worldview is, struggles to be totally consistent with their worldview. That's what I just said about the atheists. Why do you care about morality? You're being inconsistent with your worldview. Why are some Christians hypocritical? Because they're being inconsistent with their worldview. So the point that I'm making here is what worldview gives the best reasons to have morality? And then there's going to be some Christians that don't live it out, of course. But here's one way to think about this. We can't know how to properly judge if something's good or bad, like a person, good or bad, morally. We don't know how to judge something unless we know what its purpose is. And so, like, let's say that I take this Logitech clicketizer, and I say, okay, well, I was working on my deck yesterday, and there's some nails that are coming up, and I'm just going to hold it like this, and I'm going to put the nails back into the deck with this. And then it shatters, and I go, this is a terrible clicketizer. Whatever it's called. And I contact this company. I say, you guys need to make better clicketizer things. And they said, that's not the purpose of it. Well, how can you judge it based on something that it wasn't even made for? If you don't even know why we're here, how do you know who a good person and a bad person is? This goes back. Here's what Christianity offers. A clear sense of purpose. Again, we're made in God's image. We're supposed to reflect God's glory. That's why we're here. And so we've got the basis in Christianity to judge if somebody's good or bad. But the second thing is that our morality flows from God's character. If we're supposed to image God, that means that when we're kind, we're showing the kindness of God. When we're forgiving, we're showing the forgiveness of God. When we're showing righteous anger, we're showing the righteous anger of God, so on and so forth. And so we've got clear standards that help us know what is good and bad. All of this stuff is dependent on things that are changing all the time, and guesses and philosophers and stuff. And so Christianity's got a better sense of where morality comes from. The final need that we're going to talk about is hope. All of us live our present moments with regards to what we believe about the future. If we have a bleak outlook in the future, we're going to have a bleak outlook in the present. Do you think our society is doing a good job at instilling hope? I understand that Hollywood has kind of stopped making movies lately because of the whole Rona thing. But before that, do you remember you know how like movies kind of come and go with like certain kinds of themes that people make a bunch of movies on and then it shifts to another one? One of the more recent ones was the dystopian movies, like Hunger Games and Divergent and everything else that copied Hunger Games and stuff. And it's like our art in our culture lately has been more down and dreary. I just read a couple weeks ago that the birth rate in the United States is at an all-time low. My wife and I are trying to help that cause. She's pregnant with number 4 right now. But one of the things that people have said about societies is that when birth rates get lower and lower and lower, that's an indicator of a lack of hope in the future of a country and so on and so forth. Whatever, if those are the reasons for it, I don't know. But our secular worldview that we live in this culture does not do a good job of instilling hope. And you can just see that empirically in different ways. So, but what would a secular person say? Well, this is my hope. This is my understanding of the future. Somebody might say, well, I hope to leave the world a better place. I hope that after I'm gone, that I've left some kind of mark on the world that's made it a little bit brighter in this spot or this city or whatever. And one of the problems with this is Ecclesiastes 1:15. What is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be counted. Forgive me for using this illustration again, but I think last time I preached for you guys, I preached from Ecclesiastes 1. But I like this verse because of what it says about that kind of approach, that I'm just going to leave the world a better place. Well, you realize that there's some things in this world that cannot be made straight. So let's say that your purpose in life is I want to stop this problem or that problem, and maybe you'll make some difference for a little while and it will actually help some people. Let's just say that it did. Imagine for a moment that you're on an airplane and it's about to crash, but you've got like 7 minutes. So both of the engines are down, and so it's kind of coasting into a mountain. But you've got 7 minutes, and you're like, okay, I got 7 minutes, I got to use the restroom. So you use the restroom on the airplane, and when you go in the bathroom, you find that the light's not working. And you go, man, that is just terrible. So you use the bathroom, you get out, and you talk to the steward person, and you talk to the steward person, and you say, the light's not working, we got to fix the light. Do you think everybody on the airplane is going to go, oh no, let's fix the light? No. If your worldview says that this is all going to be blown up one day and there's no consciousness after all of this, what does it really matter if you make somebody's life a little bit better? You're fixing an airplane, or you're fixing a light in a bathroom on an airplane that's going down. That's what your worldview says, if I can caricature it. Okay, so that's one problem with it. Another problem, or another approach to the secular approach to finding hope, is that you have to accept death as a natural part of life. I think there's a song in Lion King about this, that when you die, your body just kind of feeds a plant, and so you kind of decompose and then become soil that ends up becoming part of the circle of life and all this kind of stuff. See how good Disney is with helping us with this stuff. Does that really sound satisfying? My hope is that when I die, I'll feed a powerful oak tree, maybe an apple tree, and people can kind of eat some of what I left or whatever. I don't know. Like, how weird does this? I don't know. But you accept death as a natural part of life, and then you get to feed the plants. Now, let's say that you're one of those people that work in the hospitals, and you're supposed to like counsel people as they're about to die, and this is your last words to them. Does that really sound satisfying? What's the biblical worldview to hope? 1 Thessalonians 4, verses 16 and 17. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a cry of command, with the voice of an archangel, and with the sound of the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive, who are left, will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. So we will always be with the Lord. All right. Buddhism and pantheistic religions, they teach that when you die, you go into the all-soul. You remember that Avatar movie with the blue people? It's not as good as The Last Airbender. That's the good one. But the one with the blue people, where like the planet's being destroyed because people are harvesting the planet and everything, and every time they like cut down a tree, it's like Earth is that planet's being harmed, and it's got like some kind of weird feelings or something. Religions that teach that everything is God, when you die, you kind of get sucked back into the all soul, like this thing that's like this living organism. But what you lose is your consciousness, your sense of what's personally true about you, who you are. Notice that in this text, when you die, we will always be with the Lord. That's one thing to point out about the Christian sense of hope, is that you still get to be you, but in a perfected way. That's pretty cool. But it's not just I get to still be me, but I get to be me with other people. In verse 17, that we get caught up together with them in the clouds. That all the Christians who have passed on, that we get to be with all of them forever. But ultimately in verse 17, that we get to be with the Lord in a way that I guess we can interact and have personality and choices and stuff like this. Here's some of the descriptions of the God that we get to be with. He's the God of all comfort. He's the light of the world. He's the good shepherd. He's the refuge for the oppressed. He's the perfect Father. He's the God of peace. He's the God of grace. He's the Redeemer. So many different descriptions of God in the Bible. So many of them could be summed up with the word love. That when we die, we don't want to just exist after we die. Because in hell, that's what you get. What you want after you die is love. And we get to be with the God of all love. Does that sound more palatable than this approach to hope? By the way, after I go through these discussions with the skeptics, does any of this prove Christianity to be true? This doesn't prove it to be true. What it does, though, is it shows you that your emotional reasons for hating the Bible and hating God, maybe you were misguided with some of those emotions. Maybe you have some emotional reasons why you should want Christianity to be true because of what it offers. And now you're ready to see the archaeological evidence for God, or for the Bible. And now you're ready to see the logical arguments for the existence of God and why the Bible's reliable. And you don't have emotional reasons why you might just outright reject all of those arguments. Because you see that there's reasons you should want this to be true. Look what it offers you. It offers you your deepest needs. Now, I don't know if you're having any conversations with people in your workplaces or schools or whatever. Do you need to know all of these atheists that I quoted from? No, you don't. But do you know what you could do? Is if you have opportunities to talk to people, is ask them, so what really is your hope? What are you putting your hope in? Like when you die, what are you hoping to have accomplished? What does that look like? And then deconstruct that a little bit in a loving way. Or identity. Who do you think you are? Well, do you think your emotions ever change? Do you ever feel like you're one person one day and then next year you're a totally different person? Is that really a reliable way of understanding yourself? Morality. And just asking questions that cause people to think about their worldview and the inadequacies of it. I hope that this has been helpful for us. I hope that it's at least encouraged us that Christianity has the best explanatory power for the things that we all know we need. We're about to sing a song. We're about to sing the song, O Thou Fount of Every Blessing. All the blessings, in the ones that we just looked at, they all come from God. And if there's anybody here that's been rejecting him or walking away from him, we're about to sing this song. If there's anybody that has any needs, please come forward while we sing this song together.